power amps and power conditioners and power plants. That's a subject we're going to talk about today. Here we are in a different location. We're still in part of the sales office. This couch happens to be in a little tiny area where the guys come and take a break right near customer service. Different followers me. And if you look over here, so check these. See these speakers over here? You can see them in the background. There's a turntable here, and there's some acoustats in the back. Those speakers were designed by Arnie Nudell as a project for Chipotle. Our buddies own Chipotle restaurants, Steve Ells and Bob Wilmer, and they're both big audiophiles. And so they had hired Arnie and me to design speakers and the stereo system. So those were part of what they did. We actually supplied Chipotle with electronics for their speakers for years. That was a while. Anyway, interesting trivia around the hallowed halls of PS Audio. To our subject today from Joe in Spotsylvania, Virginia. It sounds like Transylvania, Dracula territory. All right, Joe. He says power amps and UPS and power conditioners. I've heard that these products, such as my Bryston 4B3, which is 900 watt on its bridge, should not be connected to UPSs and power conditioners because they would limit the available power when the amp really needs a lot of power for those peaks that are so common in classical music. Thanks, Joe. Joe, that's a great question, and that is one of the, well, I was going to say it's one of the great wrongs of high-end audio lore. And I struggle to say that because, you know what? It's mostly true. And here's where I'm going to give a shameless pitch for PS Audio. It's mostly true except when it comes to our stuff. All right, so that sounds trite. But let me explain why. When you take a power conditioner, let's say you go down to Home Depot or you go to Best Buy, and there you're going to find a surge protector, maybe a cleaner, or we'll get to UPSs in a minute. But let's just say you take a passive power conditioner off the shelf. We'll pick on Best Buy. When you do that, you are inserting a series component, usually an inductor that's wound with little skinny wire. An inductor is nothing more than a coil of wire wrapped around some type of magnetic material. and these inductors work because AC signals going through a coil of wire generate a magnetic field. And when a magnetic field is generated, it sucks some of the power, if you will, out of that signal. So the idea being that at very low frequencies, that coil of wire looks just like 0 ohms, for discussion's sake. But as the frequency goes up, where the noise is located, the impedance in the coil goes high, and it blocks that. And that's how a coil works, and that's why a filter for AC is usually one of these coils, right? So a coil is a device that is a wrap of wire around a piece of magnetic material. With high frequencies can't pass through it very easily, and low frequencies can. It will restrict the sound. And I've heard it a number of times. There are very few power conditioners out there, very few, that don't restrict that sound somehow. Now they'll tell you, it'll put up, and I can hear the howls of engineers. If you take a resolving system and you take an amplifier and you plug it into one of these passive conditioners, you will hear it sound wimpy. It'll bleach out the sound and just rob it. So that's not a great idea. It's not a great thing to do. That's where that myth comes from. But something like a regenerator, our power plant, is very different, because instead of raising impedance at higher frequencies or DC resistance at lower frequencies, which is what happens with these passive conditioners, An AC power plant, like what we make, which is a regenerator, actually does the opposite. Because it's an active device, instead of the one, 1.5 ohms of DC resistance we typically have in our homes, a power plant will actually lower that down by several magnitudes to where you're getting zero point 0.01 ohms, 0.001 ohms. So as the resistance and the impedance of a circuit, AC circuit, lowers, the opposite effect happens. Now you're into the territory of increased dynamics, and that's very important. So we have to qualify his question. If you put something in line that raises the impedance, yes, that is accurate. If you put something in line that lowers the impedance, like a power plant, then you're in good shape. In fact, you're in better shape than you started out. Last thing, UPSs. An off-the-shelf UPS should be avoided for high-end audio. And the reason for that is fairly simple. There are two types. There are the modified sine wave, which is basically a step square wave, because that's a cheap way to make an AC. If it goes into AC protection, into battery backup, you're going to get these horrible looking square waves coming out of the regenerator, and you'll hear it in your system. It'll buzz and ring, and it'll sound awful. Don't do that. There are pure sine wave UPSs, more expensive, but they're more prevalent now. I would avoid those as well, and there's a couple of reasons, but the main reason is, to a fault, they almost all use Class D amplifiers, and those Class D amplifiers that output the sine wave cannot handle low power factor loads, which most stereo equipment is. So power factor is when is a measurement of how voltage and current track each other. And a low power factor, they don't track each other very well. So as the voltage rises, there's no current drawn, and at the very top of the sine wave, all of a sudden current will be drawn at a big spike. And if you take a standard off-the-shelf UPS that has a good sine wave coming out of it, you'll actually get increased distortion, like on the order of 10 to 15% when powering your high-end stereo system. Now, if the lights have gone off and there's no electricity, nobody really cares. 10 to 15%, hey, it's still running, right? But for audiophiles, for people who care about sound, that's not a good idea. So stay away from those. Power plants, like from a company like us that specifically makes them for high-end audio products, absolutely. And no, they don't restrict dynamics, they actually improve it. We'll talk more about that in a future video. Thanks for watching. Bye.